Second. Okay. Good morning to everyone. This is meteorologist Justin Horn here. We're going to start weather update here on the KSAT weather app. We're also trying to get up on the KSAT weather app as well. But the KSAT app, we should be live for you. We're going to be live on YouTube. We're going to be live streaming on the website too, ksat.com. We're going to get you up to date on everything that's going on this morning weather-wise. Obviously a very, very busy morning. We've got all of our crews here. Making sure we're getting this completely covered for you, because I know there's a lot of concerns about being out and about on the roads this morning and what exactly is going on. So let's go ahead and take a look at the radar. This is a live look at what's going on at this moment. We're starting to see the freezing drizzle actually pick up a little bit. I was just talking to Sarah Spivey up there in Bernie. She's been live in Bernie all morning in the cold. And she was reporting that the drizzle is starting to increase a little bit. Not a surprise here. We're seeing a little bit of increase in coverage. And where you see this pink color, that's roughly where we're seeing some freezing drizzle. Now, it takes time for these roads to kind of freeze up, but we're already starting to see a little bit of that on the city's northeast side. If you were watching a little bit earlier, Katrina Weber reporting that some bridges there near Weidner were closed because there were some slick spots and there was an accident earlier. Some cars crashing with some slick spots in that bridge. So that tells us that things are starting to change over a little bit. We've got to be very careful here. It's mainly the northern half of Bexar County where we're seeing some issues. And I think Mike just let me know that we're up now on the KSAT weather app. If you're joining us on the KSAT weather app, welcome. This is what we call our live appcast. We come to you digitally, let you know exactly what's going on. And Mike will be here with us. Stephen Cavazos is in the Weather Center. We've got our live reporters out in the field. We'll be able to bring it all to you if you'd like to join us on your phone or your tablet or online, wherever. But this is the latest with the radar. You see there, again, things beginning to pick up. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer to Bexar County, because there's a line here. It's basically, I would say 410 north, where we may start to run into some issues. We know the higher flyovers here along 1604 can always be problematic. The higher they are, the greater chance they have to sort of freeze up. And with the conditions we have now and temperatures the way they are, 32 is the latest report, Mike, right at the airport. So we're kind of right at that line. And I think here along 1604, it may be 31. And so this is where we start to find some of those issues. And this is all moving north, and it's all light, but it may pick up just a little bit more. This little patch over here where we're looking at Leon Valley, SeaWorld. Temperature's marginal here, but we'll have to watch the roads very, very closely. So what we can do here is look at some of the road temperatures. And very quickly, I do want to talk about bridges. We kind of pointed this out. Why are we getting these bridges starting to freeze up? Well, this is how it works. Air temperatures drop below freezing. The bridge is exposed to the cold air above and below. So you're always going to see these bridges, and we're seeing this on the northeast side, freeze up first. And this is what we have to watch. Even those ones that go over the creeks or the rivers, Those are ones that can ice up pretty quickly. And this is northern Bexar County, where we'd be concerned about that. And that's where we have had a few issues here and there. So that's why we just got to use a little bit of extra caution this morning. Now, if you're wondering about schools, if you haven't heard yet, most of them are closed. But you can go to our website, ksat.com, and that's where you can get the latest updates and see if your school is closed. I know a lot of the major districts are indeed closed this morning out of abundance of caution here in San Antonio. But as you go north into the hill country, things get rather dicey. So up there in Bernie, we've been talking to Sarah Spivey, a lot of the trees, a lot of the signs collecting ice. It's only a matter of time before those elevated roadways start to become slick. In the city of Austin, a ton of problems. They've had multiple crashes, multiple issues up there. That is not a place you want to travel. Up I-35, there's going to be more and more slick spots. So what I'd like to do here, Mike, I'm going to come over. We have the winter weather hit up in, I think we have it pulled up. We do. Weather explainers, perfect. Could you pull up road temperatures for me there, Mike?
Sure.
Yeah. Because I do want to talk about that. Yeah, perfect. So this is a look at one of our products we have here on the radar where we can look at road temperatures and see exactly where they stand. And I can go ahead and pause it. I'll take over here, Mike, and we can see. There we go. Look at some of the numbers. So basically what this is saying is that any road in this area is probably around 33, 34 degrees, marginal. And that's why northern Bexar County, it's close. We're not quite down to freezing yet, but remember, it's the bridges and overpasses that start to go first, so they could be a little bit colder. As you get up towards Comfort and Bernie, road temperatures are now closing in below freezing. You go north of Kerrville, then we have some issues. Here in San Antonio, most of the roads still above freezing. We're looking at 38, 39 there near the airport, but it was that crash there on the northeast side that tells us, yes, some of those bridges and overpasses are starting to go, and we could see more of these. A lot of times what happens, we see one of them start to ice up and then we start getting multiple reports. So we got to be very careful with the temperatures. This is going to be so very important today on how it all plays out, where the temperatures are. And once again, you can see that the radar is really starting to pick up here as far as coverage goes, and starting to see these patches of freezing drizzle and freezing rain roughly north of 410. So I want to show you the forecast very quickly. This is midday today, still seeing some of that patchy freezing rain across the hill country. 6 o'clock, same story. We still got that cutoff line there, northern Bexar County. Then as we get into tonight, that's when things start to get perhaps a little bit worse. We're going to get some heavier precipitation. Again, the big question will be, where is that freezing line? Because if we get heavy precipitation in the hill country, which I think we will, and it'll be below freezing, this is where we could see some serious ice accumulation. If we get up to a ½ inch, up to 3/4 of an inch of ice, we're talking tree limbs down, we're talking power outages, and that becomes a real problem. And obviously the roads will become treacherous. San Antonio could pick up some heavy rain, but the north side, northern Bexar County, needs to be watched very, very closely, because if we get some heavy icing here, there could be some large issues tomorrow morning. This is 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. Still seeing that freezing rain across the hill country. 8 a.m., same story. And seeing some moderate, maybe it's even heavy rain in spots. Then by midday Wednesday, we're starting to see some of this calm down, and maybe by the afternoon, same story. So one of our producers, Colin, is in here with us, and you're monitoring YouTube. Do we have any questions coming in?
Bexar County offices are closed today.
Bexar County offices are closed. So that's just some news coming in. Bexar County offices are closed. And by the way, yes, we are on YouTube. You can communicate with us if you'd like. If you have some questions, we'll do our best to answer those. Also, storm pins, another great feature that we have. You can send in your pictures. What are you seeing? If you're seeing ice, snap a picture safely, send it into our KSAT Connect. You can do that on the KSAT weather app, and we'll try to show as many pictures as we can. But as we get into Wednesday night, I think things are starting to calm down. By Thursday, we'll eventually see some sun, but not before we could see some of those heavy accumulations of ice. So what are we looking at here? This is the freezing rain impacts. We think today, midday through midday Wednesday. And where you see these darker pink colors, that represents major issues. So major impacts for places like Kerrville, Comfort, Fredericksburg, Johnson City, Blanco, Candelia, where we can see ice accumulations up to 3/4 of an inch. Dangerous travel, power outages are likely in this case. Not a good situation. As we go further south, there's going to be a corridor here with some moderate impacts. We think places like Bandera, Fair Oaks Ranch, Bulverde, over to Canyon Lake. This is where we could see some icy elevated surfaces, some surface roads, and there could be some travel troubles and isolated power outages. Further south, all the way down to 410, I'd say, minor impacts where we could see some bridges and overpasses become slick. We've already seen some of that and some minimal icing. So that goes for northern parts of Bexar County. Mike, if you could, do we have any pictures coming in yet?
We've got one from our, I'm trying to get this lined up here, from William Caldera, our photographer that's been out in toward Bernie with Sarah Spivey this morning.
Perfect.
And let me try and, yeah, this is a little bit.
And I believe Sarah is following along with us. She's following along the stream there in Bernie. I'm going to go to the next graphic here. We'll come back to the storm pins, but we're going to start our KSAT Connect. We'll start to get some of those coming in. 32 degrees here in San Antonio, 28 Kerrville. I mentioned the numbers are so very important. 32 Port SA, 31 Randolph. So there's kind of the freezing line right there. Helotes 30, Bernie Stage 30, Bandera 29. So there's a lot of places below freezing as you get north of San Antonio, and yes, that will cause some problems.
Storm pins, if you wanted to back up and look at it.
Perfect.
That was from,
there it is.
Bill up there in Bernie this
morning. So this is a great example of the ice building up on trees. You can see that all the limbs basically covered in ice, and then you get these little plants covered in ice. The rocks, those will be the first to go. You'll see stop signs with some ice, maybe parts of your car, and bridges and overpasses come right in after that. So that's why it is just one of those dicey situations that we often see. Colin, what do you got over there?
Okay, power outages, 5 scattered on the north side.
Okay.
5 customers affected so far.
Okay, so we don't have a lot of power outages. That's good. I don't think power outages is going to be a huge issue here in San Antonio, but as you get into the hill country, definitely could be. And we looked at the numbers. So here's the big picture. Dicey travel north of San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, San Angelo. Don't do it. Bad day to travel. It'll be the case that way tomorrow. Just don't do it. Travel is not going to be good across Texas. Here's our forecast today. 32 at 10 o'clock, noontime 33, 34 at 3 o'clock. We've got a 70% chance of rain. And we'll see temperatures hold pretty steady in the mid-30s, but above freezing, an important distinction there. I would like, if possible, if we could go over to Stephen real quick. Stephen, if you're ready to go and talk a little bit about what you're seeing on the roads. I know we had that crash on the northeast side.
Yeah, we've had a few issues, Justin, that have popped up. Now, I first want to actually start here at 10 at Comfort. Our friends at TransGuide, I was on the phone with them off and on this morning talking about the conditions out there. They're going to keep a close eye on this particular area. As Justin mentioned, this is really where we could start seeing a treacherous commute in the coming hours. But right now, things are quiet along 10 at Comfort, so this is a little bit further up on the northwest side. Thankfully, the roads are quiet. Not a lot of traffic out there this morning, but we are keeping an eye on it. Sarah Spivey's been out in Bernie throughout the morning, so we do have coverage out there. So we'll keep you updated as the morning does get going. But it's actually been pretty quiet here in the metropolitan area, and it could really be that a lot of folks are staying home today. We just reported that Bexar County offices are also closed, including several school districts. So I'll tell you this, that could really help in terms of congestion and maybe avoiding a few crashes here in town. Now, we also are keeping a close eye on those bridges and overpasses. As I mentioned earlier, and we've talked about this throughout the morning, is that those bridges and overpasses are usually the first to be shut down, and because that's where we will see some of that ice accumulate. Keep in mind, we are going to still see TxDOT crews out there pre-treating these roadways to make sure that they're obviously safe to travel on. But if you can, I would just say it's best just to stay at home today. It's not a bad idea just to hunker down a little bit. But I do want to bring you in here to that crash that we mentioned earlier. Now, this is where Katrina Weber was live during GMSA. Now, that crash was around Weidner Road, near O'Connor Road, pardon me. And we know that the roads were closed. We saw several crews out there working to make sure that they could pre-treat the area. Sarah Acosta was also live not too far from there, where we did have several closures also reported. So just make sure to be on the lookout. Now, while the issues are quiet here in town, I can't say for the same for our neighbors up in Austin. We take a big drive up here. Justin, I think you nailed that perfectly. I mean, you do want to avoid traveling up to Austin Austin if you can today. They've reported multiple crashes. The situation over there is just not good. We know at least one of those crashes is reported to be a fatality. So just some sad news to report out in Austin. The first responders have been very busy. They've reported ice on some of those overpasses already. So just make sure that you watch out. I would say if you had plans to travel up to Austin along 35, reschedule that. I wouldn't say it's the best time to travel up there right now, but we're going to watch that area closely. But let's get back here at 10 at Comfort. It's not bad right now, but I know that is subject to change in the next few hours or so. Things have been quiet relatively here in town, but I think it could be because we've seen some of those closures with the school district, the offices here in Bexar County. But Justin, unfortunately, our friends up in Austin just have had a terrible start to this morning.
Not good. And it just shows you how the temperatures make such a big difference. I mean, it may be a degree or two cooler up there, but that's the issue that we're having. I think we have a few minutes before Mike needs to come and do the cut-in live on GMA. Do we have time to go to Sarah out in Bernie? I know I'm kind of throwing that at you at the director there, but if we could, we'd love to talk to Sarah briefly. Yeah, they're going to try for us, but in the meantime, here's the light freezing rain, light freezing drizzle that we still have going on. Someone asked about New Braunfels. We'll check in there very quickly while we're waiting to see if we can get Sarah on. But light freezing drizzle working in for you too. Temperatures are below freezing in New Braunfels. There could be some slick spots there. I would not be surprised at all. So New Braunfels is another area that it's kind of in the same boat as northern Bexar County. It's going to be, I think, some minor impacts, but those bridges and overpasses, we just have to watch so very quickly. And if we don't have time, guys, to get it in before the cut-in, that's okay.
Latest out of New Braunfels, 32 cloudy skies. So right at that freezing mark there.
There you go, yeah. 32 in New Braunfels right now, so right on the line. Okay, so I'm going to go and switch it off with Mike real quick. We got about 25 seconds, Mike, before we get into the live TV cut-in.
All right, here we go. And you can flip that over on the prompter, please, so I can see what's going on. So this is, again, like we always talk about, it is live TV in here, so stand by. And good morning, everyone. We are still seeing some light rain as well as some freezing rain moving on through the area. And there is some being reported out there at the airport and places up to the north. Freezing temperature right at 32 degrees at the airport. That doesn't mean things are freezing on contact, but we are seeing some icing, especially as we go up into portions of the hill country and some of those elevated surfaces, even in and around town. Temperatures really aren't going anywhere. This is going to be off and on throughout the course of the day, and then heavier rain overnight tonight, early tomorrow morning. And that is our weather cut in, and we are going to be breaking in just about another 3 minutes or so for our 5-minute news weather kind of formal cut in that we usually do at the bottom of the hour. But we just want to keep you updated on what is going on here. And like Justin was talking about, and we have been emphasizing, and Sarah Spivey emphasized this earlier this morning, the surface temperatures, road temperatures are still doing pretty well here in town. We are looking at these numbers. Surface, and that doesn't include any elevated roadways, but down there actually on the ground, because think about it, just a couple of days ago we were at 76 degrees. Yesterday we stayed in the 40s throughout much of the day, 40s and 30s. So the ground, kind of holds that heat in a little bit more. Even up in northern portions of Bexar County, we are looking at 34 degrees, so it's just kind of flirting right around freezing right there. But again, the air temperatures are well down in the upper 20s in portions of the hill country. So any of those elevated roadways, and it doesn't have to be one of those flyovers, it could just be part of the highway going over a creek or something like that, but it's bathed in all that very, very cold air, and that's why things are going to start to freeze up on contact on some of those elevated surfaces. Now, for instance, out there at the airport, they are reporting light freezing drizzle as of right now. That doesn't necessarily mean it's freezing on contact. Yes, sir.
Sarah Costa is going to be live for us, I believe. If you want to check in with her and see what she's seeing where she is.
Sarah Costa, what's going on? Give us the latest.
Hey, good morning, Mike. Yeah, we are headed to another accident, another crash on 281 and Borgfield. But what you're looking at right now is the access road of Loop 1604. So far, not seeing any black ice in this area. We just left the northeast side. Judson Road elevated area where it goes over Lookout was closed down. They had a San Antonio City Works truck out there applying brine to that black ice. But so we're just taking it really slow on the roads. We're trying to avoid the highways and elevated surface if we can right now. That's why we're on the access road. But again, we're headed to a major crash 281 and Borgfield. We'll keep you guys posted throughout the morning. Back to you guys.
Be breaking away here in just a moment for our cut-in during Good Morning America. As a matter of fact, it is just 30 seconds away. But notice how when Sarah was driving along on the road right there on one of the surface streets, everything is moving along fairly well, just damp roads. But again, it's one of those just fine line type situations. So we really have to be careful. And as the day rolls on, now this is not going to be raining constantly, but it's going to be sort of off and on. I'm going to break right now, and we're getting ready for
Time check. All right, 7:23. Let's get a quick look around town. Things are still fine here in terms of incidents, but we did just speak to Sarah Acosta. She's heading to an incident along 281 at Borgfield, and it does look like we have another incident that popped up here off of 35 at Walters. Now, notice a lot of these TransGuide cameras are picking up some of those damp conditions. Here in town, things are starting to get a little bit busier, so some of those issues are popping up on the roadways. Let's get a look at the map. So one of the areas that we were keeping a close eye on was actually off of the highway here along just off of 35 there at O'Connor and Judson, or Wheaton Road, pardon me, where we did have the road closed due to a crash that involved multiple vehicles. Now, we know that TxDOT crews are going to be out there pre-treating the roads with brine. Sarah Acosta, again, mentioned that in her earlier hits, but we're going to continue to watch the roads closely. I do want to mention the areas up toward Austin along 35 have just not been good. If you don't have to travel today, that may be a good idea, just to avoid that travel up to 35, where we see multiple crashes that have been reported. The Austin Fire Department has been experiencing major issues, but we are watching these areas closely. Let's get it back here on TransGuide. 90 at Nogalitos, 10 at Bernie Sage. These are the areas that we're going to watch closely throughout the morning. No major issues to report out there, but we're going to have more on weather coming up in the next few minutes.
Good morning, everyone. Here's a live look out there by the airport. And as you can see, there is a little bit of light rain, actually some light freezing drizzle that's being reported out there as well. And we've been seeing this sort of fill in a little bit more as the morning has rolled on. And as you can see, there is where it changes over just to the north of 90 from a little bit of light rain into freezing rain. Now, surface temperatures are still on the warm side, but as we continue to stay cool, watch it on the elevated roadways. This is going to be the situation off and on throughout the rest of the day. And we are done with our cut-ins for, let me grab one of those other clickers there as well. And if you're just joining us right now, good morning, everyone. We are staying on with our appcast, as we call it, on the weather app as well as online, just to keep you updated, because this is one of those situations that is continuing to change. And one thing that has been continuing to change is what's showing up on radar. There was hardly anything earlier this morning. A lot of fine mist out there as well. When I came into work this morning about 3 o'clock, it was just very fine mist and the roads were damp. And now we're seeing a whole lot more of this show up. Now, this obviously is in the form of, or being picked up as, some freezing precipitation. Notice where it sort of changes over right here, just on the west side of town, right around, say, Leon Valley, what is being detected there. Now, one thing we have to kind of watch out for, and also keep in mind, the temperatures out there. So we've got air temperatures that are in the 30s. We're at 32 out there at the airport. Randolph is at 31 as of right now. So there's the freezing line, and it's just about along 90 and 10. North of there, well below freezing. Bulverde's at 29, Bernie at 30 as of right now. The airport's at 32. But of course, it's then the surface temperatures that remain somewhat on the warm side. However, with these temperatures at 32 and all those overpasses that are sort of sitting up there in that cold air, they're not down on the ground. Surface streets are doing pretty well as of right now. You got to watch out for that, because it's those overpasses as they continue to sit up there in that colder air. And that's where we are going to be seeing some of these some of the icing problems that are going to start to pop up there. So if we can, there we go, get rid of temperatures on there. And this will all continue to work its way up to the north. We're going to sort of see this off and on throughout the course of the day. Yeah, some of it's going to be in the form of light rain. We've already seen some accumulation, though, on some of the elevated surfaces. Earlier this morning, Sarah Spivey was up there in right around Bernie, and there was a tree up there, just a small little tree, and had about 1/10 of an inch of ice coated on it. Well, that's going to continue to get added to, and especially overnight and tomorrow. We're looking at maybe 1/2 inch to 1 inch of ice coating trees, coating power lines, and that's going to be a real big problem up in portions of the hill country as we go into tomorrow. So here's forecast, and throughout today, it's going to sort of be off and on, where it is going to be raining at times, misty, kind of drizzly. Temperatures aren't going to be going anywhere today. Then as we go into the afternoon hours, same situation. We'll still continue with some of this, and same thing going into tonight. Then late tonight and starting to go into the overnight hours, that's when we're going to start to see the rain pick up. And this is one of those situations where, even looking at late last week and over the weekend, we were looking at Wednesday as being the day with some of the heaviest rain around here. Well, that definitely is playing out. Problem is now that heavier rain is going to mix in with some of these freezing temperatures. So as we start to see not just the light stuff, but the moderate, maybe a couple of heavier downpours here and there, as that's in this air that is below freezing, and the overpasses that are below freezing, and tree limbs and everything else, and even some of the surface streets as they continue to stay at 32 degrees, maybe even some of the blacktop will have a little bit of ice on it. So that is going to be the situation. This is at midnight tomorrow morning, and then even through the morning hours, we continue with some of this rain. That will continue on through the morning rush hour, even though more than likely it's not going to be a very active rush hour, if I can venture a guess as far as what folks may or may not be doing tomorrow, given the fact in the forecast. Then finally by the afternoon hours, this is going to start to sort of ease up just a little bit. And the freezing impacts, though, it is the hill country, like we were talking about, where it's going to be maybe 1/2 inch to 1 inch of ice accumulation. Have we gotten Sarah Spivey? Is she on yet? We were going to check with her because she's not quite yet. Okay, I want to check with Sarah because she's out and about. And by the way, been dealing with wind chill temperatures out there in Bernie this morning that have been well down in the low 20s and even upper teens. That's the other thing we're having to deal with today. But back to the ice accumulation, 1/2 inch to maybe 3/4 of an inch. So that's going to cause some potentially some big problems in portions of the hill country. Travel is really not recommended. And then on northern Bexar County, over toward Bandera, that kind of lighter shade of pink, yeah, we'll still have some icing on some of the elevated surfaces. And again, because those things are just sitting in that cold, freezing air. Further on down to the south, throughout northern San Antonio and say north of 410. And then on the east side right there, we will have a little bit of icing. And the other thing to watch out for too, even if you're staying at home, if you have a deck that's elevated, you get a little bit of rain. That thing's 3 feet up in the air. Sarah was out there and even was showing some of the temperatures of the surface. And then there was a small little plant that may be 2 feet tall. It had ice on it and it was below freezing. So you don't have to get that far off the ground to get into those freezing temperatures. And so, yeah, things are going to get kind of slippery around here. And again, this is going to be the situation through roughly midday tomorrow. Then it will start to sort of ease up a little bit more. Now, once again, we're talking about temperatures that are well down in the 20s in the hill country. That's not going to be changing all that much, if at all. And you can see just this stream of moisture that's pumping on in here. We've got a really shallow layer of cold air. It's maybe goes up 1,000 feet, if that, which is not that high up when you think about it. And above that, it's very, very warm. All this moisture getting pumped on in here, but then it falls into that colder air. And that's why we're seeing some of these icing conditions. I want to check in with Stephen right now to see if there's anything going on, anything new on the roadways other than up 35 in toward Austin, which has been just a mess.
It's a huge mess over there, Mike. I mentioned I had to step out of the news of the studio to get our friends at TransGuide on the phone. Now, this is a shot at 10 at Kerrville West. Let's get a quick look there and see what the conditions look like. Now, roads are quiet, but that's not to say that they aren't slick out there. Traffic has just been getting on by without trouble in this area, but it's one of those spots that we have to watch closely throughout the next few hours because we want to make sure that you can obviously arrive to your destination on time and safely, but it doesn't really look like we're seeing any slowdowns just yet, but it's one of those spots again that we will watch closely throughout the morning. Now, I do want to mention we do have a crash. I mentioned that Sarah Acosta was traveling out to this location. This is north of 1604, so it's North Bexar County, 281 northbound at Borgfeld Road. Unfortunately, it's one of those spots where we're not going to see any of the conditions because the TransGuide cameras don't reach that far. But if you've traveled through 281, you know it's a very busy travel spot, especially when we have a lot of crews out there, bridge work. So the commute can be messy at times, especially when a crash is obviously impacting traffic. So again, Sarah Acosta is heading out there. Reports of a major crash in the area. Now, we do have a new incident here in town off of I-35 southbound at Loop 410. You can see a little bit of that buildup already taking place as folks are getting on that interchange there. So one of the things that we've been mentioning here and throughout the morning is just watch for those overpasses and bridges. That's when we will likely see that ice accumulate. Remember, KSAT Hero trucks are going to be out there throughout the morning, spraying the area with brine. Make sure that you obviously watch out for them, but they're doing that to pre-treat the roadways. So let's get it back here on TransGuide. So we showed you this shot at 10 at Kerrville West, and you can see that again, folks aren't really having too much of a trouble right now. But as we jump back around 10 at Bernie Stage, you can see that a lot more folks are getting out there. Very quiet there at 10 as we are getting different shots at TransGuide. But I think, Justin, it really could be because a lot of classes have been canceled today. We know that a lot of city and county, or really Bexar County offices are also closed. So that could be helping. But we're going to get some information about KSAT Hero trucks. Seen a few stalls out there as well. It's best just to stay in your car when we have issues like this on the roadways, just because it's probably the safe bet. But I'll get some information, so just stay with us for that. But it's a quiet start here in town, I would say.
Yep. Stephen, thank you. Yes, just I'm talking to the control room real quick. Yes, we're trying to get in touch with Spivey, Sarah Spivey. We're working on getting that live shot for you to give you the latest from what's going on in Bernie. This is the live radar, and this is what we've been watching all morning. Very quickly, let me just sort of reset things. If you're just now tuning in, this is what we call our Appcast. We're live on the KSAT weather app. We're live on the KSAT app. We're live on YouTube and on the website as well. And what we like to do is just bring you continuous coverage here of what's going on, what the impacts are, what you can expect this morning, and try to answer all the questions that you have. You can do that on YouTube. You can ask your questions. We've got a few asking about Helotes, what's going on in Bernie. So tell you what, let's take a closer look here. What is going on in Helotes? And right now it does look like you're getting some light freezing rain. This isn't terribly heavy, but we know that the roads are starting to become questionable in a few spots, mainly just the bridges and overpasses here in Bexar County. So far, the surface roads are just fine. But what we can do is switch over to our road conditions. And this basically, if it's green, that shows us where we have just wet roads. And notice that most of Bexar County is showing that. It's not until you get up into Kendall County, Kerrville, up to Fredericksburg, where we're starting to run into some road conditions that are not so favorable. But expect these colors you see here to migrate south as we get more and more of this. And these temperatures continue to be cold. We now have Sarah Spivey live for us out in Boerne. And Sarah, man, you've been braving the cold all morning. I'm glad that you look very warm, a nice big coat. So tell me, how are things right now?
Oh, things are a little slick here in Boerne. I am very warm, by the way. I've got this awesome scarf on, okay? So here's the thing. We are at the Bill Miller, which is right at Scenic Loop and I-10. There's I-10 behind me. We're watching that bridge very carefully there because earlier TxDOT was treating it, and so far there haven't been very many issues. But one thing we're watching carefully, and you guys have been keeping track of it on the radar, is the road temperatures. So I've got an infrared thermometer right here, which measures temperature at a bit of a distance. Oh, thanks for turning on that light there, Billy. Yeah, so here's a look at, we're at the road temperatures here close to the ground. You can see that it's still well above freezing. So the earth radiates its own heat. In fact, that's how we get weather. And so the closer that the road is to the ground, the warmer it's going to be. Now, eventually, this will probably get to below freezing by tomorrow, and then we'll have to watch out for slick spots on the ground roads. But it's the elevated surfaces right now that are getting a little bit of ice on them. So I want to show you this pole right here, which, as you can see, I'm going to step carefully on these rocks because they're covered with ice too. This pole is covered with freezing rain, ice. Now there was a good shower. I'll show, you see that tree there? Thanks, Bill, there. So that tree is covered with a good amount of ice as well. I'm not able to get up to it because it's a little bit slippery and I want to be safe. But earlier I measured on that tree about 1/10 of an inch of ice accumulation, but I can just see that it is even more than that now. Probably at least a 1/4 of an inch of ice accumulation on that tree. Now it's at a 1/4 of an inch that we start to see the tree get really weighed down. And if you look to the top of the tree there, can you see how it's kind of tilted away a little bit? I don't know if that's translating well on camera, but this is what we're worried about in the hill country. Tree limbs sagging onto power lines, and that would cause power outages. And we're really worried about that as temperatures start to go down and the rain starts to pick up, which will be tonight and tomorrow morning. So tomorrow morning in the hill country, especially north of 1604, we're going to have to watch out for some major impacts. So I showed you earlier how the ground temperature is a little bit warmer than freezing. I want to show you now this metal pole with this infrared thermometer. Can you see that? It's going down. This is regulated a little bit, so it's a little bit above freezing there right now. But obviously that pole is frozen because it's got ice on it. So the elevated surfaces get colder quickly and we see some ice develop. Also, look at these winds. You see these winds here in the hill country? They are howling from the north. And in fact, those cars at that dealership here in Boerne covered with ice right now. A lot of us in San Antonio, after the winter storm of 2021, we got those ice scrapers, right? But if you are living in north of 1604 and have a little ice on your vehicle and need to get somewhere and don't want to wait for it to defrost and don't have an ice scraper, guess what? Old credit card will work great. A spatula, a plastic spatula. You don't want to use a metal spatula on your window. And I just want to give you a current reading of the temperature and the winds here in Boerne. I've got my handheld weather data here. So I'm going to let the temperature regulate a little bit. I'm going to hold it up and you can see that the temperature is actually going down. It's well below freezing here in Boerne. As you can see, this is the look at the wind speed. And this is a little wind gauge up here. Starts to pick up as we get a gust. So yeah, things here in Boerne are a lot more sketchy than they are even in parts of San Antonio because it's been colder for longer, ground temperature is coming down, and right now we're experiencing some driving drizzle. And it's these areas that are a little bit in the higher elevations as we head into tomorrow that are going to potentially deal with 1/4 to 1/2 an inch of additional freezing rain, which, as you can see on that tree, causes it to sag down, and that's going to cause some issues with power outages. One thing I want to point out, I was doing a little bit of research with ERCOT. Seems like the demand is the supply is going to meet demand, and so that's not going to be an issue. ERCOT's not going to be an issue. Here's why. So back in 2021, we were in the single digits, all right? Right now we're in the upper 20s. That is a 20-degree temperature difference. To put this in perspective for you, it's cold, absolutely, but a 20-degree temperature difference is like the difference between a 70-degree day and a 90-degree day. That is a big temperature difference. So yes, it's cold, but our grid can handle this kind of cold. We just have to be careful on those elevated bridges and overpasses this morning. And in the hill country, I think even streets could become an issue as we head into tomorrow. So we're going to be out here live in Boerne throughout the morning. Me and photojournalist Billy Caldera, we're going to be keeping an eye on things, but I can already tell you the precipitation's starting to pick up here and accumulations are getting larger. So if you have any loved ones that have to travel in from the hill country or travel out to the hill country, especially on I-35 up to Austin, I would suggest that they stay home through at least Thursday morning. It's looking pretty bad out there for over the next couple of days for the hill country and that I-35 corridor. So reporting from Boerne, I'll toss it back to you guys. Give us the details. What can we expect?
Yeah, Sarah, great stuff. Thank you so much for filling us in there. What's going on in the hill country? It's great information. And so if you're going to see some power outages, which we could see in the hill country, know that it's not ERCOT. It's likely going to be because branches or power lines are sagging. So the grid should be able to handle this. Everything I saw in ERCOT looks like we'll be just fine there. So that's not a concern. But the road conditions obviously are, as Sarah pointed out, if you're going up towards Austin, horrible situation up there. As Stephen and Sarah were talking about. So we'll go back to radar here. We had some questions coming in on YouTube. What about the west side of San Antonio? And I believe, Colin, you said someone was reporting a little bit of ice west of downtown.
Yes, that's correct. And questions about the Schertz area as well.
Questions about the Schertz area. So let's put the radar in motion here. Everything we see coming through downtown looks like it's liquid, but I can't completely rule out that some ice has made it this far south. Really, the line has been kind of up here along 410, but we're starting to see that bleed down into Alamo Heights. It's a close call, razor thin margin, as we've been talking about. So it's entirely possible. Bridges and overpasses, again, the first things to go. And let's look up towards Schertz, because we mentioned that. This is an area that probably is indeed seeing some freezing rain, freezing drizzle up around Randolph. There along the Bexar and Guadalupe County line. We had a little batch move through. Now it's pretty light, but there is another batch right behind that. Probably some bridges and overpasses starting to get a little slick here. We've seen that along I-35 here on the northeast side. And one more time, we'll show you this great explainer about bridges and why they tend to get frozen quicker. Air temperatures drop below freezing. Okay, that's about where we are in a lot of places in northern Bexar County. The bridge is exposed to cold air above and below. So this makes it super vulnerable, and bridges will always ice before the surface roads do. So that's why you're going to look at those high flyovers. The higher they are, the more susceptible they are to freezing up. Surface roads certainly can freeze up too, and I think we'll see some of that in the hill country, but not necessarily here in Bexar County. So if you plan on driving here around Bexar County, if you can stay in, not a bad idea, but if you do plan to drive, take it slow. Try your best to avoid bridges and overpasses. I think some of them have been treated, so the further south you go into San Antonio, you're probably okay. But north side, 1604, north along I-35, once you get out of Bexar County, things become far, far more treacherous. We know Austin is in all sorts of bad shape up there. So that's the kind of the bottom line right now. We're going to watch the roads very, very quickly, though. And we can actually go back to road temperatures very, very quickly here. I know we're getting closer to another TV cut-in here from Mike. Here, let's look at road temperatures. And I think this is going to be an important tool for us next couple days, even tonight into tomorrow. Remember, this is a prolonged event. It's not just today. We're going to be talking about this tomorrow, too. So we can look at some of the road temperatures there on the northeast side, showing 36, 37, okay. That does not mean that the bridges and overpasses aren't down to around 32. But you get a little further east, around Marion, over towards Seguin, temperatures get a little bit colder, 33. And let me take this off, move Move up a little bit. Let's see if we can clear this. It's not clear.
Hey, Justin, while
Yes,
you're
sir.
doing that, I just want to give you an update on the NWS chat,
Okay.
chat site that all the meteorologists and do with the Weather Service and everything.
Yes.
Local storm report, Timberwood Park, amateur radio, ice reported on Highway 281 at Borgfeld Road,
Okay.
northern Bexar County.
And that's where Sarah Costa is at this time, covering a crash. And Stephen, you want to talk a little bit more about that? There's
Yeah,
the road temperature up along 281, 33.
We are getting a few different shots from TransGuide now. 35 at Loop 1604. TxDOT has reported that there's also actually ice out in this area as well. Not a great shot, unfortunately, because the droplets on the camera have made it very difficult to see. But what we can make out very clearly are those flashing lights out there. Now, you can see that our friends over there are trying to get that lens wiped down for us. But that's obviously contributing to probably some of the issues we're seeing out there. Unfortunately, a crash has been reported in that area, but also, again, TxDOT has reported that there is some ice out there. I have a few things to mention here on our map. So one of that areas I put out there, that area, I-10 Loop 1604 eastbound at Lookout Road, and you can see that we are starting to see a little bit more of a delay in that area of town. Not a good spot right now, but I'm watching it closely. But as Mike mentioned, we also have a pretty big issue up along 281. And that crash at Sarah Costa is traveling to is on the northbound lanes at Borgfeld Road. Now, unfortunately, there are no TransGuide cameras, as I mentioned earlier, so we won't show you the conditions here just yet, but we'll talk to Sarah once she arrives on the scene, find out exactly what things are looking like out there. I do want to get you back over here to 35 southbound at Loop 410. We do have another crash that was reported. It was causing a little bit of a delay for drivers along that interchange there, but it doesn't really look like it's causing a whole lot of issues anymore. A wide look at the map now just shows, thankfully, it's still quiet in terms of congestions. Now, issues are starting to pop up, but I'm thinking that because classes are canceled, we know that the Bexar County offices are also closed today. We may not see a lot of folks out there on the roadway, so that could help in terms of avoiding crashes and congestion. But still, nonetheless, stalls are also becoming a big deal as well. I do want to mention this program, the TxDOT Hero program, provides many services to folks that are stranded along the highway. Don't get out of your car if you're stranded there, because it could be treacherous. So just remember, some of the services that they provide include changing flat tires, performing minor vehicle repairs. They remove minor crashes from the roadway and assist first responders at those crashings. Their number is 210-732-HERO. So give them a call if you are stranded on the highway. Other than that, things here in town are starting to get a little bit wet, but this is where that spot I mentioned that TxDOT says that there's also been ice reported out there. But I know one of the other spots that we're going to continue to watch closely, 281 at Borgfeld, when Sarah Costa arrives to the scene. Hopefully we can get an update on the conditions out there, guys.
Thank you. We'll come back over here to the road temperatures. We were just showing you that before we tossed over to Stephen, and they're borderline here. I mean, you get in northern Bexar County, we're talking 33, 34, so that's when we start to become a little bit concerned. We've got Sarah watching the roads up there in Bernie. Further north you go, the more issues you run into. Fredericksburg, Austin, those places, you just avoid. You don't want to go north really out of San Antonio today, because then you will definitely run into some icy conditions. We'll put it back on radar here and take a look at this latest batch that's coming through. And we're seeing that some of the heavier freezing rain from Hollywood Park along 281 up to Bulverde, Leon Springs, Stone Oak, getting pretty good dose now of some light freezing rain. So Stone Oak, there's Reagan High School, and of course Northside ISD is closed. If you're curious about schools, you probably know by now, but if you want to check it out, KSAT.com, we have all the school closures, and we just got word, Colin, just let me know that Texas State and San Marcos now closed, correct? Also in Round Rock, not a surprise. Further you go up I-35, the more issues you have. But this is Stone Oak, Reagan High School, Hollywood Park, Johnson High School over here, seeing this patchy freezing rain. Timberwood Park, that's always a place that we know can collect ice here in Bexar County. That's the northern extent of Bexar County, right? So some issues there. We'll stop this, zoom out real quick, and we're about to do another TV cut in here with Mike, but I do want to look at, I think we can look at some of the cameras here. Let's see, that's...
Next one over is cameras.
Yeah, I was going to look, oh, you're right, thank you. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, let's see, that's, there we go. That's what I wanted to look at out at the airport. You can see the rain's coming down. Traffic seems to be flowing just fine. Obviously, there's a bridge and overpass right there, and it's probably okay, but man, it's going to be so close here in town with just the way the temperatures are playing out. We're right at 32 at the airport. So the roads are probably a little bit above that. But we still want to take it slow, right? Even wet roads are a problem, and you can see the rain's coming down pretty good. We did have some delays at the airport, I believe, earlier. I was hearing that. So this is not just here, too. As we've said, this is all of Texas is dealing with some of this. So we'll go back to the radar here locally. I got to clear this out. Always forget about that. We got to clear the cameras out and then get back to radar. There we go. And I'll take a look at the national radar. We'll zoom out and show you that this area of precipitation, freezing rain, extends from northern Bexar County all the way up to Killeen, Waco. Dallas is a mess. Austin is a mess. Out towards San Angelo, actually showing some snow there. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but freezing rain, sleet, maybe some snow mixed in. We're just looking for freezing rain here. The air is so shallow that it is just going to be that light freezing rain, and it gets heavier tonight into tomorrow. That's part of the problem, is we know there's more precipitation coming, and temperatures are going to hover right there around the freezing mark. So that's going to be our concern in the coming days. And we'll probably be right back here tomorrow at the same time with you digitally to talk about all this, because things could get a little more dicey tomorrow. I'm going to switch it over to Mike here, meteorologist Mike Ostrich. Taking over, sir, and you've got a cut-in coming up, too.
Yeah, we've got a cut-in coming up in just about, Don, our director, did you say 3 minutes? 3 minutes, okay, so it's going to be Steve and I giving an update during Good Morning America right there just before the top of the hour. But again, I mean, this is a situation that, unfortunately, and not to be like, Chicken Little, the sky is falling, but it is looking like it is going to get worse before it gets better, and that's going to be tomorrow morning. So back to switching over to our radar, and you can see that most of the hill country, this is up into the hill country where a lot of this is falling, but we do actually have a little bit of this light rain even down here in portions of Medina County, as well as just to the north of Crystal City right there. And there's a big stream of moisture coming in here from the Pacific Ocean. So that is riding on top of this very shallow layer of cold air here at the surface. Go up in an airplane and, stick a thermometer out the window about 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 feet up, and temperatures going way, way up. But we've got this very shallow layer of cold air down here at the surface. And that's why everything is falling, and then it's not cold enough, it's not thick enough to where this would refreeze before it reaches the ground. But the ground temperatures are obviously down below freezing, at or below freezing. So that's why we're seeing that buildup of ice. It's kind of, yes, sir.
Mike, if you have a second, there's actually an explainer on there too that talks about the
right in here?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
To freezing rain, the second one down.
There we go. Okay. Perfect. And Justin's mic was off there. So here is the situation. So you've got freezing above freezing temperatures way up high in the atmosphere, and then this is above freezing. But anything that falls melts in this warmer air because everything is very, very cold way up there, up in the atmosphere. But then it ices down here. It doesn't have a chance to then refreeze before it hits the ground. When it refreezes, it melts here, and this layer is thick enough, then you get sleet and those little ice pellets, if you want to call them that. That's not necessarily a bad situation, but this is kind of as far as icy roads, trees icing over, things like that. This is the kind of the bad situation, if you will, because we do have the icing going on around here. So let's go back to the radar right now and get ready for our cut-in. This is going to continue, and like I said, it is unfortunately going to get worse because we will continue to see this stream of moisture and sort of thicken up as we go on into the overnight hours as well as tomorrow. So we're going to stop here for a second, get ready for our cut-in, and join you back in just a couple of minutes.
Time check. We are now approaching 7:56. Let's get a look at the conditions outside on the road. Now, we, of course, are keeping a close eye on those bridges and overpasses, but we know with schools, some of the schools, canceling classes, that could help in terms of congestion and avoiding collisions. But you could see some of those areas in town. We're starting to see the roads get a little bit slick. Our friends at TransGuide have been keeping a close eye along I-10, a little bit further up North Path 1604. So things aren't looking good, though, guys. 281 northbound at Borgfield Road. I just got an update from Sarah Acosta. Unfortunately, unfortunately, it looks like they've shut that area down, so she's not able to get to that crash, but we're going to keep a close eye on it. No TransGuide cameras in the area, but we're starting to see a little bit of a delay that's building up in the southbound lanes. Getting it back here to town, KSAT has also reported that there's some ice there along Loop 1604 eastbound at Lookout Road, and we are seeing both in the east and westbound lanes, Mike, a slowdown there as well, but looks like the roads are getting a little bit busier here as we give you a wide look. No congestion, but some of those issues are starting to pop up on our radar, so we're going to keep a close eye on things. But remember, contact KSAT Hero Truck 210-732-HERO if you are stranded on the highway. There's great service, but thankfully not spotting a whole lot of collisions here in town just yet.
Which is very good news. If you're on some of the elevated roads, definitely take it easy out there by the airport. Now, the temperature, as you can see, it doesn't look like it's raining right now just by looking at that camera, but you look at radar and there is still a little bit. And notice how the majority of this is in the form of frozen precipitation. So that doesn't mean it's completely freezing on contact, but the elevated roads, since we do have some of these temperatures that are still right at or just below freezing. And let me look at some of the temperatures around here as of right now, and you can see the airport's being reported right at freezing. Port SA, right at freezing. So again, just because you hit freezing doesn't mean everything freezes instantaneously, but when you continue to have those elevated roads below freezing and the rain continues, that's when things are going to continue to ice up. So this is going to be the situation throughout the rest of the day. Temperatures probably won't move at all. It remains very cold up in the hill country. We'll have some of this rain off and on. The problem is overnight and tomorrow morning, it is going to be getting heavier.
All right, there, welcome back. We're back on the Appcast, back on the weather app and on the KSAT app. We've been following the freezing temperatures all morning and following what's going on. We'll wrap this up pretty quickly, but if you have a few more questions, this is your opportunity on YouTube. You can send them our way. We'll try to get those answered. School questions, obviously, I can tell you that most of the school districts are closed. There are a few that are open, so you'll want to check for sure, but you can check that on our website if that is your question about school districts. And I want to get you the forecast here in a second, too, because I think that's important. We've been talking a lot about the now, but we got to look forward because things could possibly get a little bit worse as we get into tomorrow, at least for some of us. So I'm going to clear this off, and then we're going to go back to radar. There we go. This is the batch of freezing rain we've been watching most of the morning. It's been tracking north. It's a pretty large batch of light freezing rain that's been around Bernie over to New Braunfels. Even Seguin, I should point out the temperature there in Seguin was around 30, so probably seeing a little bit of light freezing drizzle there too. Most of the roads here in San Antonio have been okay. We've had a couple of reports of a bridge. What was it near Weidner, Colin? I believe Weidner and O'Connor in that area where we had a bridge that had some a little bit of ice and then there was a crash. So
Ice and Bandera.
Ice and Bandera. We just got a report there. Let's see. Let's go up to Bandera and see what it looks like there. And right now, yeah, we're seeing some of that light precipitation, but plenty cold in Bandera. We can actually check the temperature there. Let's check in because temperatures are going to be really important. So let's actually switch it over to Metro Temps so we can get a look at Bandera. Zoom a little bit closer, and of course, the temperature in Bandera is not showing up. That's how it goes. But I would venture to say it's somewhere around 30. Probably in that range. So with the precipitation coming down, yes, likely some icing going on there. It picks up a little bit probably as we get into tonight and tomorrow. And that leads me to the forecast, and we do need to talk about that. What is going to head our way? So let's fast forward to noontime today. This initial batch probably moves away. We may get a little bit of a break into the afternoon. This does not show a whole lot around 6 o'clock. This is the newest updated model, by the way. We're just getting this in. But as we get into tonight, this is 10 o'clock. Here we go. Starting to see a little bit more freezing rain, freezing drizzle. Midnight, beginning to pick up even more. Likely liquid for most of San Antonio, but the north side, there it is, some freezing rain. Then as we get into tomorrow morning, here's where I get concerned. This is much heavier precipitation. These darker purples represent some pretty heavy freezing rain. This is where we start to get some accumulations. This is where the trees start to sag a little bit if you're in the hill country. Power outages, not out of the question here. This is where we could pick up 3/4 of an inch of ice with events like this. And notice that line cuts through Bexar County. It'll be a very close call as to where that freezing line sits. And if northern Bexar County gets some real issues on the roadways, it's possible. We do need to watch that very, very closely tomorrow morning. So could there be more school closures tomorrow? Absolutely, something to watch. Not going to guarantee any of that because these things change, but that's the idea. As we get into 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, same story. Freezing line right there, right where you start to get some elevation there in northern Bexar County, and this is pretty heavy stuff. This is also where we could pick up some decent rain in San Antonio. We love the rain. We need the rain, but we don't want all the other things that come along with this cold air and the freezing rain that is really plaguing much of the hill country. This is 4 o'clock. Things are starting to wind down, and then by 7 p.m. Wednesday, I think we'll get a little bit of a break. So the major impacts are going to be up there around Kerrville, Comfort, Candelia, Blanco. These are all areas that will have some major impacts from the ice. Already starting to see some of that. Travel not encouraged. I'd say right now it has already started. So you probably have to wait until Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon before things get any better. And then further south, Fair Oaks Ranch, Bulverde, Bandera, Canyon Lake. Over towards maybe even New Braunfels. We'll have to watch that number closely too. Moderate impacts. Some elevated surfaces become slick. The bridges, the overpasses, there could be some travel trouble spots here. And as you work south in San Antonio, this is where we have some minor impacts, but impacts nonetheless. Some icing, some bridges and overpasses could get slick. So it's always a dicey situation here in San Antonio. We see that a lot where it's just a close call with the temperatures. And we're sitting at 32 still at the airport. And you know what? I just saw a TransGuide image, 35 in Flores. And Steven's getting ready for the 9 a.m. show. But I'm going to see if I can pull up that TransGuide shot because it looks like it was a bridge. And I would not be surprised if maybe it has to do with ice. We can't be for sure. Let me see if I can pull up that TransGuide shot. If you'll just bear with me here. There we go. So I just pulled up TransGuide. Let me go see if I can pull it up over here. Oh, perfect. Steven's joined us. Steven, do you mind just pulling up that, looks like I-35 in Flores for me? There you go. Yeah. So hard to know if this is due to ice, but this is downtown. Remember, someone just reported maybe some ice west of downtown. Could this be the case? Could it just be wet roads? I don't know. It's such a close call, but with it being on a bridge, man, we just got to be so careful. Take it slow around those curves, even in downtown San Antonio at this point. And Steven, are you having any other crashes, or is that the only one?
Yeah, you know, it's getting pretty busy out there, Justin. I was just on the phone with Sarah Acosta and our friends over at TransGuide. She's going to actually head out to an area of town where we do have a crash reported that is causing a pretty big buildup involving multiple vehicles on the northeast side. She's going to work to get some information for us. But yeah, our friends at TransGuide have been pretty busy as well, updating our wall with different shots. Now, this is a particular area at 35 at Flores Street that could have just been a KSAT Hero truck that was pre-treating the area and making sure that they could spray with that brine that we talked about earlier. Those elevated areas are really what we're looking at right now. Now, in terms of crashes here in town, there are a few more that are popping up, but I would say the big one is going to be right along 1604 on the northeast side. We're going to start here, though, 281 at Borgfeld. So things are changing minute by minute on the roadways, and this crash reported in the northbound lanes. Now, remember that this area, there are no TransGuide cameras that are able to show us the conditions, but what our map is able to pick up is a little bit of a slowdown right there. And again, that crash reported as a major one, but unfortunately, we're just not able to see what it looks like. So just watch out along 281 north. I would advise maybe just change your travel plans this morning if you had plans to travel up north of 1604 there. But the big issue is where KSAT reported that there was ice here along Loop 1604 eastbound at Lookout Road. Now, that's that area of concern that Sarah Acosta is going to check out because we're hearing reports of a pretty major crash out there. Now, the east and westbound lanes skies just aren't looking good right now. I was speaking to our friends over at TransGuide, so they noticed that there is a little bit of a buildup, out there on the frontage road. So that crash, that's where it could be located. But other than that, here in town, the metropolitan area hasn't really shown a whole lot of stuff out there in terms of congestion or crashes, Justin. And I think it could be because, again, the classes are canceled. We know that some offices are closed today, and we know that maybe folks are just staying home trying to avoid all this nasty commute. But I would say that some of the areas that we're really concerned about are probably going to be north of us. And we know Austin, as I mentioned, completely busy. I mean, the first responders had several crashes reported out over there.
So many issues up there. Yeah, there's just so much ice on the roads up in Austin, Dallas too, and that's why there's some delays at our airport, as Colin was letting me know, because there's delays coming out of Dallas because they can't get out of Dallas. So this is the latest here on the live radar, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to update one more time here, and then we're probably going to let you go, and we'll be live at 9 a.m. On GMSA to let you know on TV, and we'll be streaming too, let you know what's going on. But this is the latest. This is that batch of freezing rain that has been working its way through San Antonio, north into Comal County. And where you see the pink colors where the radar thinks we have freezing rain, now I think probably ends right at about 410. But the 6 uniform on the northwest side, northeast side, north side, we know that this is a road that can become slick in these situations, and we're already starting to see that. So let's probably avoid the bridges and overpasses here along 604 on the north side. Just a good idea at this point. If you don't have to travel on that, don't do it. Take the surface roads. If you're south to 410, probably okay. Things are probably okay. We're right at freezing at the airport, probably a little bit above as you get down towards Stinson. This is all working its way up toward Canyon Lake. So Canyon Lake, 281, all going to be treacherous here. We know 281 in Borgfeld, report of a crash there earlier. We know there's probably some slick spots going on. And this is all working its way north and northeast. And we're going to see some more batches of this rain today. So let's get you the forecast one more time. Here it is. And this is the latest update just coming in. So this is the latest possible data we can give you. 6 p.m. today, things quiet down a little bit, but things are going to pick up again tonight. This is where we get concerned because the heaviest of the precipitation is forecast to be tonight. This is midnight. You start to get some of that freezing rain in northern Bexar County, probably liquid for most of the city. Where that line sets up will be very important. But the hill country certainly will see some heavy freezing rain by tomorrow morning. And this is where we start to see that accumulation of ice. Heavy enough where it starts to accumulate. It's been cold enough, starts to accumulate up to 3/4 of an inch of ice. That starts to weigh down limbs of trees, starts to weigh down power lines. We could get some power outage issues, and that's something that we'll be following as well. It won't be because of ERCOT, won't be because of that. It'll be because of power line issues. Then as we get into 8 a.m., still seeing some problems. School closures could be a problem again tomorrow morning. We'll keep you posted there as well. Midday, things are starting to quiet down maybe a little bit. That'll be the case by the afternoon, and hopefully we'll see a little bit less Wednesday night into Thursday morning. And by Thursday afternoon, we get a chance to clear out. We talked about the freezing rain impacts. They're going to be major across the hill country. Hunt, Kerrville, Harper, Fredericksburg, Blanco, Comfort, Candelia. Those are areas that will be hit pretty hard by this. Moderate impacts along the Bear, Comal County line, southern Kendall County, Bandera County. Elevated surface roads will be slick. And there could be some power outages. I don't think that's the case here in Bexar County, but we will see some minor impacts. Already are seeing minor impacts with bridges and overpasses. Temperatures at 32 here in town. We mentioned Stinson, a little bit above, so it's southern part of the city doing okay at the moment. 33, but freezing temperatures as you go north of there. 31 Helotes, 30 Bernie Stage. This is widespread. San Angelo, Dallas, down to San Antonio. This entire area covered in freezing rain at the moment, and it probably gets worse before it gets better. Your forecast today, 33 degrees at 11 o'clock. We do slide just above freezing, I think, by the afternoon. 35, still with a good chance of showers, light rain, light cold rain here in town. And then tonight, things may get cold again, down to 32 is what we're forecasting right now. 35 Wednesday, that means we're going to see some heavier rain again tomorrow. Especially in the morning. We'll be watching for that closely. The rain tapers off on Thursday. We warm up above freezing, 47. The weekend looks great. So that's where we are right now. This is our KSAT, whether you're watching us in the KSAT weather app or the KSAT app. This is our live appcast. We're likely going to do some more of these throughout the day into tomorrow. You can always stream with us, and we want to keep you up to date digitally. But that's the latest we have now. Join us for GMSA at 9. We'll have a lot more information then. Be safe out there. Thank you.